It is a release day today for me, and I wanted to prepare a special video for you guys at the meantime. It's a track you probably already know if you have seen my For Produce 1 sample series, and as usual I will give the project for free for the people who buys the track on Beatport and sends the receipt to Hanna. So let me put the mail here, hanna@mercurialtones.com. So basically all you need to do is buy the track on Beatport, send the receipt to Hanna, and Hanna will send you the project file. But let's stop talking now and hop in. So I will try to build the track one by one and try to talk about a bit my decision making. The first thing, of course, I often tend to do a kick so that I can at least feel the groove. If you have seen my previous tutorial, I really don't like processing my kicks too much. This is a simple melodic techno style kick. And if you want to get this type of kicks, I made actually sample pack after this track, which is called the Mercurial Core sample pack. There are a lot of kicks like this in that sample pack. I will put it here somewhere so that you can take a look. After this one, I wanted to have kind of slightly groovy driving bass sound. The first thing was this one, so I changed the kick. And if you take a look at the tune itself, this is basically piano, so it almost looks like, to be honest, like FM sine wave, and it sounds like one of those. And main plucky sound comes from just this transient, and on top of that a bit more really hard to hear altogether, but sounds like this. So I had this really cool driving bass going on, and afterwards all I need to do is like a kind of creating a high end to balance this out. As I oftentimes release in melodic techno and a bit more driving melodic techno, I start with 16 hats or percussions. In this case, I start with this percussive sound. It was also coming from the set sample, of course. If you don't know what these LFOs are doing, I have a video about that. I will put it here so you can understand that basically what it does is changing the drive rate amount here, and it's also changing the offset amount. So there is always different weird drive rate amount on the vocoder, so the sound gets slightly different at each time. And as you can see, if I play this one together with the kick, you can immediately feel the groove, but I wanted to brighten up ever slightly. Second 16 hat, but this time it's a brighter one. And then we have off hat, shaker, white noise. You can definitely feel this almost lagging feel on the hi-hat, and I really like to do this. It could be a bit weird if you're really used to the quantizing everything, but I really like to make it a bit more like lagging, a bit faster sometimes, a bit slower sometimes. It just feels that weird stuff. And then this is turned into my signature thing with the hats, adding kind of another white noise layer to make everything a bit more random. So it sounds like this. I just love it. I just love doing this. It's one of the things that I almost do in all my tracks, getting this white noise on the background to make everything really super cool and organic. But after that point, I was thinking to add clap and snare, but I was not really into using regular clap and snare. I first actually started with the snare sound, so I just want to like kick snare sound. So I start with the snare, just try it out and see how it works. I felt like when I add the snare, while I was trying to make everything a bit laggy, a bit groovy, snare make everything a bit tight. So track suddenly became too tight, too rigid, and I didn't really like it. So I was thinking like maybe take the snare off, choose the clap, and maybe change the rhythm, maybe use the cold clap, something like that. But I end up making this groove instead, which made the track completely other way around. So one clap changed the total feel. So what happens here, I'm using the clap once per bar, but I'm not using it like a right off the beat, off beat in this case. So it's right before the second snare hits. Take a look what happens, with and without. So this is without. It almost stops the drag. It's like dun 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 and dun 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 dun. So this kind of really stop effect in the track all the time. And because it's a very washy clap, I'm not overdoing it. One clap per bar just to give you the feel, change the vibe of the track. And at this point I was looking for make the track a bit more city-like, a bit more classic, a bit more nostalgic at the same time. So I created these pianos, percussions. The first one is just a simple piano hit from the sample, like a distorted piano, and then there's a reverse version of it on top. Not that loud, but just gives this kind of weird vintage vibe. And then I think I have just crystals. Again, used as a percussion mostly, and together with the track they sound like this. At this point in the track, I already decided what type of actually lead sound or arpeggio I want to go for. I decided, okay, we have this really smooth background, everything is nice. I want to have this really big lead sound. It has to be really melancholic to focus on the life of Sati, because he had this kind of, he lived a life where people were not really appreciating his work. And after his death, after many years, actually people start to understand the value of in his work, and then we appreciate it now, but he never got to see it. So that's kind of melancholy in it. That was really interesting, that I want to really reflect in this track. And to make everything a bit, because of that, I want to make more melancholic feel in the track while keeping the groove. So idea was adding the like this smooth background pads. So this one is really just pigments and sample, and then this chord progression. And this was the part that I really felt like the track is going in the right direction, because now I had the feel and the vibe so that I can write actually a melody on top of this. So I feel like it's really important to get the ambience before writing the melodies. If I really go for a theme, so that I don't come up with random melodies, even though maybe they are good, they are not fitting the theme that I was going for. So it was like this. So at this point, I was ready for the lead sound. So I wanted to come up with something. I already had the sound in my mind, so it was just putting into the notes. I actually had another tutorial for this type of sounds in my I think the video is called three basses from 3 different genres. I will put that one here as well if you want to go into a bit more detail. But the main idea is having this really growling, aggressive lead sound or bass lead sound. So this lead sound utilizes really different octaves. Like I think here we have 3 octaves on top of each other to create really drama, because the life of kind of Sati was drama in that case. It sounds like this. Goes down. Goes back. Now we go up. And then we bend down. That was main idea actually when I was working on this track, and I had this kind of this loop. And then I just feel like there could be some nice crisp arpeggio in the background to make everything a bit more glued together. And that's what I did basically when I was working, put an arpeggio there, coming from the sample of course, but it's like a classic arpeggio sound. I just had the different layers to make the sound a bit more crispy, I think. Using the sample all the time give me this kind of detuned feel all the time, because the sample itself was a bit detuned because of all the effects. So we kept all this nostalgic feel all the way through. And suddenly the track was like this. So everything was really glued together, and the rest was just putting here and there, like getting the effects right, making the breakdown, and then gluing everything together. So I'm gonna switch the full track now so that we can go through a bit more about one final stuff which is important. So let's take a look at that. All right, here's the full track. And the first thing that I did is actually think a bit more about the break and how I'm going to do. And because we were talking about the time back then and now, I wanted to slow the tempo down, almost give back time travel effect, if that makes sense. So what I did, I automated the master and automated the tempo here. So you can see that we are dropping down tempo right before the breakdown. And that's the reason that we have this sound here. Take a look. And everything gets really slow suddenly. And there was one addition here. I added this polybrass, and that has also quite a bit of automation on top of that. And I'm automating LFO frequency. I think I probably have different, I was just probably trying different versions. So if you take a look. If you listen closer, there's a LFO on the sound, on the levels, so it's like, it's that, I know it's small, yeah, but I kind of like this type of ear candy stuff. So we have basic this chord progression, it's like going up and down, creating the vibe. And on top of that, the main idea was, okay, get the arpeggio up again. Because you can definitely feel the tempo change in the arpeggio as it moves faster and faster, I would say. And then of course we are bringing the main lead sound back. And I think I have some snare rolls in the effects, some noises. This is also resampling the original sample. Yeah. This is just a layer to support the snare. It almost feels like a group of people like just or making noise together with the snare. And then I think I have another snare here as well. And altogether they makes a bit more sound. And of course we have these reverse horns. So this smooth transition, I know it is a bit work, like adding all those layers to just to something that you barely hear, but I think it really adds to the track, especially with those type of really important transition. This one is the where really track drops into the second part, I will say. So if you take a look, you will hear what I mean. How everything comes together, like this hi-hat slashes comes back, fills up space, and then we hear the 16 hats and the kick comes in and so on. It really works smoothly and everything feels a bit more cohesive, at least in my ears, I would say. And in the beginning of the track, I also had this kind of disappointed sound. I call it disappointment. It's the main idea with disappoint here was, I think, as an artist, as a producer, I think we all feel this feeling all the time. If we feel like we make a track that is not good enough, we feel like people who are listening is kind of, I wouldn't say laughing at this, but they feel disappointed, and you hear this disappointment sound in your head. And that was the main idea for me. Like I tried to make this sound like almost like a laugh sound. So that was the emulation of that sound. I don't know if I'll succeed, but it's basically a lot of delays and reverbs and swarming them together. So it creates this kind of really cool feel in the beginning of the track, so that we get the story when we start. And yeah, that was it more or less. Let me play you full here from melody to heat off so that you get a little bit more understanding how the track sounds. And yeah, that was it. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to get the project file, just buy a copy on Beatport and send the receipt to hanna@mercurialtones.com, and she will send you the full project so that you can take a closer look. There are a lot of interesting sounds, a lot of effects and so on. So maybe it can be helpful. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you learned something. And I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.